Well folks, welcome back to the workshop. Today we have something different for you. This is an Marcrist diamond core drill, the DDM3. This is a 3-speed wet and dry diamond core drill for drilling through concrete walls with a big diamond core. This will do up to a 6-inch core or down to like 1.5 inches. Marcrist do these in two sizes, the DDM3 and the DDM2. And they also do a DDM1 as well, but it's a totally different makeup of a machine, a plastic body one. These here 2s and 3s. They're a nice big heavy machine, all metal construction. Big aluminium gearbox, big aluminium motor, even aluminium brush cover back here. Only bits of plastics on the cover as part of the handle here, part of the handle here, and a wee bubble float at the back of it. Decent machine, quite heavy duty, but obsolete now. Marcrist don't actually sell these anymore. Not sure if they do still do the spare parts for them anymore, but they have stopped selling the machines themselves. The ones they've out now instead of these here look basically like the Ibenstock machines, so we don't actually buy these from Marcrist anymore. We actually buy the Ibenstock ones instead. These here big older ones, all metal construction. As you can see, I've always found there to be one flaw with them. No badge, no serial number, no model, no spec sheet, nothing. Just Marcrist put on a few stickers. That's because Marcrist don't actually make this. This is more than likely just made in China. It's a cheaper model made somewhere else. Marcrist just buy it in because it's quite good and reliable and stick their own name on it. That's all there is to it. That's why there's no badge on it, there's no serial number on it, and there's no model number on it. They all come the same way. They're just either a blue for the DDM2 or a red machine for the DDM3. I never did like a machine that doesn't have a serial number. It just means it's made somewhere for cheap and sold on for a bigger price. I've seen these for sale on some other sites. One site I did actually review a product for as well. See, one of these is an orange colour. Exact same machine, just a different colour. There's nothing actually wrong with it. They're probably going out and speccing the best quality machine for a certain price point that has good performance, good spec, some repairability, and actually looks the part as well. This here basically just ticks all the boxes. So basically saves you going out trying to research and find the best quality machine for the certain price point. Marcrist has basically done it for you. They've went out to see what's the best quality machine for the money that you can buy, and they've teamed up with this company, whoever makes these machines. So they would have looked at the reviews and the performance and tested the machines themselves, and if they're happy with it, they would have teamed up with them. So you get the better machine, but you just pay a wee bit extra for Marcrist written on it. That's the trade-off. Anyway, what's wrong with this one? There we go. Wee bit of a growl out of it. It's the head here. She's just starting to rust inside of here. I'll just make sure of that. I'll give the customer a ring. Nope, no need to ring the customer. It's written on the side of the box. Seals in the head. So yeah, it's to do with this rust here. Seals are gone in here. It must be leaking water out all over the place. These seals have failed and they need to be replaced. Right, that's a problem. Can't buy these seals. You can only buy a few bigger parts inside this gearbox. So to buy the seals, you have to replace the entire head. Right, I've got a few options for this one. If you're ever needing a head, there's your part number. But they can be hard to find. We can replace the entire thing. That's the gearbox head, one piece, with your clutch and drive spindle and gears all engaged already, all inside ready to go. Just need to fill that with oil. But that's about 200 or 250 euro, and that's quite expensive just to replace a few seals up on here. So I don't think that's an option. I really don't think you want to go to that expense for an obsolete machine. So the other option is second hand. I've actually replaced a few of these before in the past, and I've happened to keep the head just in case somebody had a busted aluminium housing or something. Looks like it could come in handy because this one was never used for wet boring, it was always dry. So the seals inside are pretty good. If you're stuck and you didn't want to buy a new head and you don't have a second hand one, you can just replace the seals, go online and just order the spec you need. So these are a 2440, 40 outside diameter, 24 inside diameter, and 9mm thick. So the problem I have is I can see this one here right in front of me at the very bottom, which is a 22-35-7, but there's another one underneath that and I can't read that one. If I pull that one out, I'm probably going to destroy it, and I really don't want to destroy these seals because I have no other option. Maybe I'll be able to see it in this one, but because these seals are gone, more than likely it's always that middle one that gets chewed up the most. If the middle one gets chewed up, you lose all the markings, you're not sure what size it is. There's nobody to actually tell you what size these seals are, you have to read the actual seal itself. So, could order them if you want, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to replace the head. This is only a problem that appears when you're using it as an actual wet boring machine. This is what this plug here is for. There's an actual plug hole for the actual wet line going onto the machine. This actually feeds in between them three seals, and there's a hole in the spindle itself, so it pressurizes in here and shoots the water out through the spindle itself. If you're not using the wet function, you just leave this here plug on, but otherwise it just unscrews to put on that fitting. Leave that there for now. Now, we don't need to touch the motor section, we just need to go into the gearbox. Now, the only thing about these machines when you are working on them, they're all imperial. The actual socket heads, bolting everything together, are imperial. They're actually a 532 Allen key. And when you do open them, do remember this gearbox is full of liquid oil. It will make quite a mess if you don't catch it. This being a diamond boring machine, it's normally full of grit as well. Now, once you have these bolts out, when you get the gearbox head off, don't just pull it out whatever you do. This comes in 4 sections: your gearbox seal plate up here, your motor housing, and your motor cover back here. If you just pull this 2 halves apart, you're actually going to pull the armature out from inside of the motor, which means you have to unbolt this side to move the brushes to get it all back together again. We just want to split it here. Get it split. Loose, then lift it up. To keep all that grease inside the head. You don't want it all over the bench. Let that sit there to drop out. I'll just give that a wee clean up as well. That's where it cleaned up a wee bit. If you actually get onto these things, on the inside it starts showing you how good a quality it is. They're decent enough, but they're not the best. See the actual cast markings on the machine itself, the body, they're not exactly accurate. So you can see here where the original casting mark would have been, where that bearing was going. Obviously it wasn't designed right and it was in the wrong location. It had to be shifted down. Not a big deal. But on this one here, same thing. Actually I had to move the location down a wee bit. And you can still see a little bit of the hole from the actual original casting mark. That bearing's not sitting all in the actual metal. It's only around here. Not a big deal, but just goes to show it ain't the best of machines in the world. Now, that should be most of the grease out. I don't want to dump it out because I don't want it in my parts washer. You can see by the colour, something's not right there. That's because that's actually water contamination. There's water in that grease. It's just been mixed together from the seal actually filling up in here. Plus, because that seal's gone, it's actually rust and corroded at the shaft as well. So there's actually rust in that there grease as well now. So that grease needs to be changed. Now, need to dismantle this gearbox now to swap over the components. That looks good enough, Nick. You're going to get your actual selector out. And this gear on top. So the selector's underneath. This top gear's floating until the actual selector gear engages on it. So take that out. Just a wee circlip on top. Take that out. Take out your gear. Then you can actually slide the selector gear all the way up, disengaging the actual lever, and pull the gear out. Now we might have to change that lever over as well. Now on the shaft you have a keyway. Big long one. Take that out. The same as the top. You have a circle up on the bottom too. That needs to come out. Get that out as well. Now this gear in the bottom, that's what the problem is now. You look straight on, the actual gears and the teeth don't clear the side of the machine. They're actually set into the side of the body. This your section here. That gear is actually sitting up inside of here. So it won't actually drop out with the shaft in place. It can't actually clear the body of the machine. So we have to take the shaft out first before you can get that gear out. To do that, first take out this circlip. This is what holds on the bearing at the front. If we take that out, we should be able to press out the whole shaft. So get that cleared. We'll take this the bearing press and press out the shaft. Make sure your actual bearing press, this here ring here, doesn't hit your change lever or the selector lever on the inside. That's the actual drive spindle itself out. As you can see, there's the big core at the front for driving up to 6-inch cores, and a smaller thread on the inside for putting on an adapter for using smaller ones. Shaft looks okay, a little bit of rust damage down here, but otherwise not so bad. The actual surface here for the seals hasn't corroded away, apart from this hole for the water outlet, but that'll be alright. The seals are sitting here and here, so that'll be fine, they'll not get damaged. Main problem actually is the bearing. That's where most of the damage has come from. That bearing's shot and needs to be replaced. The inside then, got your main gear at the very bottom. Under that there should be a little shim. Don't lose that. So this seal is obviously gone at the front. There's not much we can do to save that. The housing has started to corrode as well. Right, instead of replacing the seals, we're just replacing the gearbox. So we can get rid of this. What the last thing we need is the change lever. To take that off, there's just a socket head bolt on the inside. That just pulls out then. Bolt sitting on here, that little pin that goes onto here in the lever. And that lever then is just engaging there on the actual change gear. So as you rotate that, that lifts it up and down on the spindle, guided by this keyway. Keyway keeps us locked in position. So it's fixed onto the shaft of the spindle as it goes up and down and engages on different gears. So there's wee square cutouts down here, wee teeth. They either engage on the bottom once it's down, so that this gear is driving. When it's midway, it's this gear that's driving the spindle, which goes the whole way to the top, the small gear that's driving it. And each of those meshes on to one of these gears on the clutch. So the armature is driving the top gear, this beveled one, and as this here clutch spins, it's going to be engaging one of these three gears, which will then turn this here shaft. Nice handy setup, but you just can't get a lot of parts inside of it. The actual lever itself you can just push out. So we'll keep that. Keep all these bits. Get rid of this head. It's nice when you get the parts washer all washed out. Fresh kerosene. Makes cleaning a lot more easier. Now, first off, before we reassemble, get this bearing changed. That was bad. No wonder it was making noise. What is she? 6005. 16005. We just need to press that on. Now, we should be ready to go. We're all washed out. Just want to put a bit of grease on here. Keep these seals good. And then we go rebuild. Just get this on first to get it out of the way. Just use a bit of Loctite on this bolt as well, just to make sure it doesn't come out again. That's her. Now, awkward, but I'll just a bit of grease on there too. Some in there to help hold that keyway whenever we're reassembling. Now, put that shaft in. Put on your shim first. Before you install your shaft fully, stick this gear on. So that has to be sitting at the bottom. These actual wee lock sleeves sticking up the way. Drop that on. Line it up. Initially press it on. So the question is now, how do you press this bearing on to this shaft whilst this gear is sitting here without straining the actual bearing? Can't stick anything over the top of it because this here sleeve on the spindle is in the way. Can't get anything to sit over the top to press on the outer wrists. You have to press the outer wrist to press it in, otherwise you're going to end up pressing on the inner wrist if you just press the spindle, which could damage the bearing. So how do you press the outer wrist only with that amount of a gap? With your old bearing, take your old one, cut it in half, set that on top. You can tape it if you need to. Then you can get a set of splitters to sit on top of your old broken bearing to press on the new bearing. Because it's cut in half, it's actually now smaller, so So even if it presses down onto the bore, it'll actually just luff back out again. That's the handiest way to fit it without pressing on the inner race. Now, the old bearing still inside the bore because we cut it in half. It can just luft out. And that's the new one set on full where it's meant to be. And the last thing, reset their C-clip inside. That's her. Refit your C-clip onto the shaft. Little ball bearing on a spring on that shaft as well for locating that gear. Try to slide the open end past the ball bearing just to make it easier to fit, so you don't have to stretch it out or anything. Lock that in. Then you can fit your keyway onto the middle. Then your selector gear on top. Get it located onto the keyway first. And then rotate your change lever so that the pin engages in this slot here. That's it. Your top gear then. There's a metal packer ring that sits on top of it. And your C-clip again on top of that. You don't want to stretch these C-clips too much because they are very thin. You will bend them very easily. That's your gear train fitted. Lastly, all you need is the clutch. You can retorque these as well. If these start slipping whenever you're boring, you put and load onto your actual core bit and the bit just keeps sticking in the hole, won't actually rotate. That nut can sometimes back off and need to be retorqued. If it does back off, you can just retorque it to either 55 or 60 Newton meters. That'll be at reset to factory settings again. Exact same as it comes out of the factory. But if you're just thick and you're wild hard in your machine and you're pressing on wild hard and you're fighting it slipping a wild lot, just because you're putting it through that much abuse. Basically, if you're big enough to hold it and you can't handle it, you can torque that up to actually 70 to 80 Newton meters if you really wanted to. That'll stop it slipping even more, but obviously you need to be a big fella to handle that there, because if she binds up, she's not going to slip very easily. So that slides in, and that's the gearbox ready to go. All we need now is oil. Stuff I'm going to use is just going to be the Bosch stuff, the 019 actual liquid oil that I use in Bosch hammers. Good for gears. That'll be fine for this here. You could use a grease as well, a fairly light stuff, but grease just doesn't get around as much. You sort of want oil, because whenever she's running, you want it coating all the gears on the inside. If it's missing any gears, they're going to start wearing fairly badly. A wee bit more risky using oil because of them seals. If they're bad at all, it is going to start leaking again. But then once this is up and running and at 2 temperature, even grease is going to start liquefying again and still leak out. So it doesn't really matter. The oil is going to do a better job in the long run. Now, you don't want to fill it completely, but you want a really good coating inside of there. Around 60 or 70 mil should be enough. And that should be us. Just don't spill it now when you're fitting the motor. That should hopefully be her. Now, does she work? Looking good. Last thing, so we'll remove this, because he was using it in a water feed on this machine. So keep it all together for him. And that's it. One Marcrist DDM3 wet and dry core drill, fixed up again with a new bearing and a second hand housing because the seals were gone and the head. Not so bad. That'll save that boy around €250 to not have to replace the entire head. Second hand one and one bearing will do the trick. Cheers for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have one of them, hope you learned something from it. Give us a wee like and a follow if you're enjoying the videos, and a wee subscribe or a membership if you also want to. Cheers.